Good morning, YouTube. You can see that I am back in the pole barn area that we're working on. Welcome back to Wiki Up Knoll. We are starting the day in the pole barn and maybe finishing it here. I'm planning on doing lots and lots of cob work in here today. I've got my little wheelbarrows set up for the different kinds of dirt and straw that I want to bring in. I'm working on clearing our table. This is the table we were using in here to do all the roofing work and all the other framing stuff that we're doing, and just collecting stuff out of the sun that we use on the regular. So I'm going to organize this a little bit, get it out of my way so I can use this table for mixing cob. I, in the previous video, made it up to just under waist high on the walls and decided at that point to stop with the bags. I do have a little bit left on my roll, but the height that I'm working at with this delivery hopper that I had is just a little uncomfortable. It's above my head now to put the dirt in, so reaching down and putting it up, it's not worth it to me to bring in the scaffold and to transfer the dirt up higher. So I'm going to go cob from here on out. So I have two things to do with the cob. I'm going to be doing cob bricks, essentially. You'll see how I do that above here on the wall base that I've made. These are all set up. It's been a couple of days of setting and drying. They're immovable, very, very stiff. And then out here, I'm going to be putting in I'll be attaching the wire mesh to the base wall, and also cobbing in along the foundation here, my dry stack foundation, with more rocks and rubble and straw heavy cob, just like I've done for the chicken coop in previous videos. So we're going to work on that probably first, and then do cob starting up the walls there. I'm going to do two types of cob to try out in here. The first thing I'm going to do is build a form, which I'll explain a little bit later, and I'll pack the form and then move the form along so the cob can set up in a uniform way. We'll see if I like that or not. It may not work in certain sections that have framing behind it. It may be easier just to pack it in by hand. That's what I'm imagining may happen, but I'm going to build the form just in case to give it a shot in areas that it would help. And then John is going to be working on other stuff. He's getting my water set up right now for my cob working station, and he's going to be working on a little bit of a temporary fencing setup around our excavated garden hole over there, in order to keep the dogs out of that area until we have the structure built up at a later time. So working on different things all over the place today. I hope you are enjoying the video so far. I hope you enjoy the progress this time. I'm sure enjoying it, and stick with us. The next time you see me, we'll be probably sorting out this stuff right here. All right, hopefully you could see what I was doing cleaning up the table. I'm now using the table for mixing my first batches of cob. You may remember from other videos, if you've been following along that long, that we've given recipes at different times. For our cob here, I've already tested our soil, and we have basically two types that I'm using here. I'll show you. This is it's like what we're using for sand. It's decomposing granite and a bunch of little chunks of rock. I'm not sifting this for this particular round of cob. And then this can, I have some more, probably about 90% clay base. I like to start with 1 part clay and 1 part of our sand mixture. And then I'm adding a lot of straw. This is uncut, coarse straw, so it's not chopped. It's just straight out of the bale, and I'm adding that in, so I'm going to mix it dry. I have big chunks in here. This is some clay that'll come apart as I mix with water. I also have rocks in here. This particular cob is going to go around the foundation layer, so I want it to be really chunky and coarse and straw heavy. As you get to more plaster layers of cob, then you mix it, you might sift it and get out any large chunks or rocks, because you want it to be smooth and spreadable with a trowel or even with your hand. But this, I actually want some of these chunks so that I can make that foundation lower level kind of ruddy or whatever, as you might say. So I'm going to mix this dry, and then I'm going to add water to it. And as I add water to it, I'm going to get the feel. And what I like to do is start with, like I said, one part of each type of soil, and then I add more or less as I get a feel for it through the mixing process. So I'm going to add water to this. I'm also going to double up on my gloves. I ran out of my other more thick work gloves. I like to wear latex or non-latex, just rubber gloves. A lot of times dish gloves will work. I just happen to have some of these on hand, so I'm going to use these up as I've got them. Dish gloves can be used for, you know, multiple rounds, but it's nice because the clay, it just, if it gets in all the cracks of fingernails and stuff, it can dry you out pretty much, because like we said before, clay's thirsty. And if you're doing a lot of it, I just like to put gloves on to protect my hands from being like alligators. So I'm going to add some water to this that I have in my jug. Some people traditionally like to mix cob in a tarp on the floor or ground with your feet, and you stomp on it and get the clay embedded, and then you roll the tarp and keep going. I just want to use my hands because I don't want to be on the ground that much, and we're doing a ton of it, so I'm just going to mix it this way. You can see this is a very soupy mix. It's very sand heavy at this point. It's not trying to hold together. I can't clump it, so I have a lot of work to do to get this to a level where it's clumpable. And I'll know it's ready because I'll be able to get a wad of it and hold it sideways like this, and it won't fall. It'll form a ball and stay in that position. So that's what I'm going to work towards. I'll do that, and then I'll show you the finished product. So here now I'm going to add more of a clay heavy. I've got a good, everything's pretty saturated with water in here. I'm pretty much started. This is the way I like to do it. There's tons of ways to do cob as you look up on the internet. I'm sure you'll see lots and lots of ways, but I'm going to add more of the clay mix to soak up some of the water. And then I do have more straw over here if I need to add more of that. I don't believe I will. It depends on how big the mix gets. So I'm going to keep doing that. You can see it's starting to get stiffer, but it's definitely, it's not holding together. See, so we're nowhere near where we need to be on that mixture. So you kind of have to learn to go by feel, and you kind of know your soil content, so you know if you need more clay or more of the sand. But usually for me, it ends up being more of the clay. If you get it too clay rich, it will crack more in the finished product. So you want to try to balance it as much as you can, but make it clumpable. So this is definitely not clumpable yet. I can't even hold it with a flat hand out. So I'm going to work on that, and then you will see me back here in a few minutes. Okay, I am back. I spared you the mixing because it's just, you know, kneading like bread dough until it comes to this consistency. I added much more soil, mostly more clay content. It's not 100% clay what we have. It's not pure, but it's pretty close, so that we have to really play with the sand content we have is pretty coarse. So I've got that figured out here, and I'll show you what it looks like. You can see it holds a form when I just stick it up in here. I can build with it. That's what we want. We want buildable things. And also, it's just mud pies. When I pick it up, I can make a ball and I can toss it. It stays in its own form. It's a little wet still, but if I hold it out sideways, it stays. It stays right there. Big wad of it. That's what I want. I want it to be formable. It's got plenty of straw in it. So I'm going to use this now around the foundation of the north wall over there and get this going. And I'll show you that process on time lapse so that you can see that progress more quickly than what it's actually happening. Okay, you saw me doing this end corner. I'm not trying to do exposed rocks at this time. I'm just adding to them and trying to basically seal in my dry stone from the outside. So I've done 2 batches here. I'm getting ready to do another batch. I actually gathered up some clay clumps from my pile. You can see the far pile over there is my more pure clay, and this is the sandier stuff. I'm getting low on my clay, and I'm getting to the part where a lot of them are just these big clumps that are hard to break apart. So I'm going to pre-soak these to break them apart in some water. Got some water going over here. See, these here are already starting to soak it up. I'm just going to dump those in, let those soak up the water and break apart so I can use them in my next mix. While that's happening, I'm going to make one more mix for this last section here. And then at a later time, after this sets up, I'll come in and do some more exposed rock that I'll be going in with lime plaster for the finish. Because just like the chicken coop here, I want for my final plaster, which is far in the future, it may not even be this season. We're coming up to monsoon season soon. And sometimes during and right before monsoon, it gets way too hot to really do lime work nicely. So you kind of have to hit the sweet spots in the shoulder season. So I may wait for next season on the plaster part, but the cob, it's good right now. But ultimately, I want for my plaster to come off the wall, and then I want to taper it at the bottom. And I like to have some exposed rock. Sorry for the wind. Again, we're close to monsoon season, so it's going to be windy for a few weeks here. But I want my wall to taper away so that any water that does happen to drip off this 1.5-foot overhang will have some rock to hit on instead of my actual foundation. So I'm putting a cob layer to seal in my dry stone portion of the wall, and then I will add additional rock that will be exposed and decorative and also functional at a later time. But right now, I'm going to move on to the next part of today's work. While these are soaking, I'm going to make a form for cob blocks on the walls. I like to just stack in wads of cob by hand, but I also want some of this to be very uniform because we have a very uniform sort of base for it in these bags. So I'm going to take this wood right here. This is an old 2x4 cut off. This is a 2x3 cut off from something, and then some old shelving boards that I have. So I'm going to use that, and I'm going to make a form that is as wide as this wall. So I'm going to mark these boards as wide as the wall, and it makes like almost like a brick form here that I can use to shove cob in, and then take the form away and let the cob set up, do the next one, the next one, the next one. So then basically almost like adobe blocks, but you're doing it in place on the wall and not mortaring between. It's cob to cob, no mortar. So that's what I'm going to work on here. In a few minutes, I'll set the video up so you can watch me cut the pieces out and see what we can get accomplished. Hopefully some of this wood is a little, it's reused a lot of times, so there's some splits and cracks, and hopefully I can find the right pieces to make it usable for what I'm going to do. Okay, we are back. This is now complete for today. I do have some exposed rock from the dry foundation still poking out, but I've got it covered where I want to. I even went up the wall a little bit I had a little wet mix left over, more of a plaster kind of texture. So started out with some cob plaster there. Anyway, this section is done. I'm gonna move on to blocks now. I did in the last segment. Hi, Zippy. Zip's laying in her spot. See, I'm trying it out. Yes, a good girl. You're just a good girl. What a baby. the door is still closed off, but the gates are in, and Ringo's back here. You can see Zip wants to hang out with the people, and Ringo is over here watching everything. He's where he can see the chickens and John and the other dogs over on the pile over there. So he's got his little fishbowl view of the world, and he's a happy hunk. And then this little lady over here is hanging out with me. So I'm getting ready to do some more cob. I'm going to use the form for the next one. This is the form, how it turned out. It has one firm side here, and then this other part is actually to rest on once I get a cob base built up with the blocks I'm making. This will rest on the previous base so that I can blend this block to the part I've made before over here. So that's why it's sort of like that. It's not perfectly straight, but it is wide enough to kind of sit exactly on my little wall here, so I can make a block fit with the exact dimension of the bag base that I'm doing. So I'm going to start on that. I'll show you some of that process on time lapse once I get another batch mixed up over here. The light is getting low. It's been a very exciting day, so we're going to keep going. Zip's inspecting the work. What do you think, Zip? What do you think, pretty girl? Huh? What do you think? She's like, I don't know. That's kind of weird. Anyway, hope you're enjoying it so far. I'll see you in a few minutes once we're ready to do some more work on blocks. All right, I'm going to try to do this. It may be windy, but we're going to see what happens. I've just wet down this portion of the south wall. This portion, it may be tricky for my form, because you can see, because I have these framing members out here, it doesn't want to go as much beyond the wall as I'd like it to. It actually hangs out. I don't know if you can see that, but it's got a gap, a finger gap here. It sits to the wrong side. So I may actually build this part up by hand and then use my form once I get to about this level, which would be tomorrow essentially, because I don't want to do more than a foot of depth in a day. So I'll start here with building lumps by hand, and then once I get up above this one, I can put it in like that. So I think I'm going to put it on time lapse because it is a little windy, and that way you can see the process, and we'll go from there. Right, that was the first layers of cob going on. You can see it holds its form, its shape. I didn't go too deep. It's like 3 inches deep most places, and then it steps up on this part. I'm going to keep on going. It's getting to the point of day where the light is slanted, so it's kind of hard to film this portion, but I'm going to keep on going across this row and then on and around, and hopefully keep on going, and then I will update you whenever I have more to show. This is very exciting. I'm super excited about the cob. It's so fun. It's like Play-Doh with just dirt. It's really awesome. All right, you can see I've made it all along the south wall completely, and now I have started this east wall. And then I remembered when I got here to the east wall that I didn't use my little form I made on this wall because that framing on the outside kind of kept the wire mesh a little too tight to the wall. On this wall, I don't have any framing out there right now, so I can use it. So I'm going to demonstrate how I did this block. You can see the difference. I think I can get an angle here. This is the stuff I just did. This is yesterday's batch. It's already starting to dry on the outside. When I did it this way, I'm leaving it very rough, putting finger presses in it as I press it down, and I'm leaving that so that when I re-wet this row for the next day, which is today, the next day's layer, they'll have something to really grab onto and kind of bond to once I wet that. And so this is one technique that I can use for stacking cob vertically. And then once this wall is up, you'll see there's going to be a nice rough surface to put a layer of cob plaster, which would be the layer below our finished plaster, across the bag, which is rough. And the surface of this rough with straw and clay and stuff sticking out of it. So that gives it something to grab onto. Essentially, it's a rough coat. And then over here, doing it with the form, I think you can see the difference. It's like a block. I mean, you're wedging it in there. It's a little smoother. I've got a little higher. It's holding its form. You can see this is an example of cob. This is a little bit wetter than normal, but it's holding its form, you know, and this is holding its form. It's holding the form I put on there. If I use the form, it looks like I can go a little higher per row, which is kind of nice as well. So I may continue, at least on this wall where I can, I'm going to continue to use this form where I'm able to, because it does allow me to utilize the cob in a more concise and kind of standardized way. So I'm going to show you how I do that on the next batch, and show you what it looks like to do this row all with the form. And all I'm doing, just because I'll put that on a time lapse to show you, I'm putting it, see, I have this side of the form is open, and this side of the form has a 2x4 to block the end, and this is a little ridge line up on top of that, so that essentially as I go, I've got something I can rest this on the block, and then I can fill back here and bond the next block to that, so that it becomes one kind of monolithic sort of block across here with no mortar lines or gaps in there. So it'll kind of bond together. The first cob I put in here, I'm going to squish into that and then bring it this way as I go. So I'll work on that. You can see how it fits on here. It fits directly on the bag that I made. I cut it to do it that way on purpose. So that's what I'm working on. I'll show you that as I mix the next batch in just a minute. Okay, we are going to keep on trucking. John has joined me now. He's over here mixing cob. Good morning, John.
Morning.
He's mixing up the next batch. I'm going to join him on this one, and then we're going to keep on going around. You saw the difference. Hopefully you can see it. I can sure see it. This with the form, I got to go in here and scrape off the edges because it's getting a little sticky, as clay does. But you can see the form hopefully is a little taller. It's a little more uniform. It still allows for some little rough divots so I can adhere plaster properly when it comes time for plaster. Both things work, definitely. This is a little bit more material. It's about 6 inches in places of material, and the other is about 4 inches of material. So we're going to keep on layering around. We actually, on the video, the rest of the earlier parts of this video, this section we did yesterday, and we come in this morning to do this because we had lost the light. So that over there is actually, it's set up enough to add to it today. And we're going to continue along this north side as well and finish up that, and then go on the other side and just keep on circling around until we run out of time today. So we are on the mission of making this pole barn complete as soon as possible and moving on to other projects. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed the progress as much as we did. If you did, please like it and subscribe if you haven't already. And then don't forget to join us back here next week on Wiki Up Knowles' next progress update.